Hi everybody, I'm Andy, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Andy.
Can everybody hear okay? I'm not used to the microphone. So I'm an alcoholic and a recovering drug addict, and I come to these meetings as a prescription for that disease, and it works very well as long as I keep taking that prescription and not necessarily coming to the meetings, but that's part of it, but practicing these steps that are up here behind me and incorporating them into my life. I found it to be an antidote to solving that problem of alcoholism, not of alcohol, like it says in that last paragraph that we just read. Bottles are just a symptom. It's a disease. It's a thinking problem that I have. It's not alcohol itself that's the problem. I'm around it all the time. I have a lot of, I own a company, I have a lot of parties and stuff, and I just had a graduation party with over 150 people at my house, and there was a lot of drunk people there, and it didn't affect me at all because I didn't ingest it, I didn't put it into my body. So a little bit about my past, a very little bit about my past is I started drinking at whatever, 10 years old or something with older brothers and sisters. There was 9 of us. I was in trouble right away, blackout drinking, drugs by the time I was 15, 16 years old, and drunk driving like a month after I got my license, that kind of stuff, and then it led to short-term jail sentences and things like that as a result of drinking and drugs, and my thinking that was the solution to artificially change the way that I feel. So I drank, I got sick, I got in trouble, it didn't work out for me, and that's my past. And what I did about it was I got on my knees and I asked God for help, and I ended up at an AA meeting. And I did AA, I was going to open meetings every day, sometimes twice a day, and at the end it was about 14 meetings a week, and I relapsed going to AA and sitting in the chairs and listening to people talk about the problem of alcoholism didn't work for me either. And then I lost my license again, and for something else, not drinking, but for tickets or something. And I ended up having a guy drive me to the meetings, and he drove me to a Big Book Step study, and that was a long time ago. And I was introduced to these principles, this code of conduct that we talk about during these meetings on Saturday morning, these first 103 pages of directions in this book on how to live life. And today's step is to carry this message. It doesn't say Andy's message, it says this message. It's implied that we're talking about the previous 11 and a half steps. And it says we carry this message to the alcoholic, and we practice these principles in all of our affairs. So it doesn't say what do I think of it. It's talking very specifically about the directions in the book. And that being a quick learner, that took me like 5 or 6 years to figure that out. But I kept going, and I had some real good mentors, and these people that were my sponsors at the group didn't know they were my sponsors, but these guys that I followed and was too afraid to ask, I just listened to them, and I did get a sponsor right away, which I highly recommend, a guide to do this process. I don't know that someone could figure this out from the directions in the book. I've worked with a lot of men. I don't know that the book is set up to work through it without a guide. Maybe it is, but there's some stuff that, especially when you get into the 4th step, setting up that, and the turnarounds, or we call them turnarounds, it says in the book, I'm prepared to take a look at these from an entirely different angle. Excuse me. I think my experience as a guide is very helpful to do these steps. So I incorporated these into my life a long time ago, and things started to change, and I noticed it right away. Within the first six months or so, all of a sudden I realized that I was placed in a position of neutrality. Other than that previous time when I was going to 14 meetings a week, and I relapsed after almost a year, probably 10 or 11 months. And I relapsed. This time it was different. Whatever it was, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, I noticed during those increments that, wow, there's not a desire to drink or drug, and that was completely different than the rest of my life, that I didn't have a desire. And the difference was this time I was daily prayer, I was listening to guys, I was starting to work on the solution that's laid out in this book. I went over those first 63 pages. I came to the conclusions that I can't do it, that no human power could, and that God could and would if he were sought. I didn't really understand what the heck they were talking about. I was 2 weeks sober when I entered into this writing. I wanted to move forward. I did the work, and the good news that I have is you don't need to completely understand this stuff for it to work. You just need to do it. Very similar to going to the gym and working out. You don't need to understand how the human body works. Physical therapy. You don't need to be a licensed physical therapist or whatever, a doctor, to understand that if you go to the gym and you do the exercises, you're going to get stronger. And these are spiritual and mental exercises that we practice here. If you do this work and you apply this stuff into your life, my experience is it will change your life. And that's been a huge changing point, pivoting point, cornerstone in my life, is that I just started doing it. I didn't understand it. I had to trust something, and I was desperate enough to do the work. And that's what I've seen. I've seen one huge necessity for this stuff to work, and it's not about intelligence or how nice you are or what your past is or your spiritual beliefs. It's the willingness, the desperation to do whatever it takes, and that's what I found different in the men that I've sponsored over the years. It seems like the guys that stay with it, that get the desired results, to stop drinking and drugging, aren't the ones that say, I don't want to drive to Braintree, Andy, it's too far, I'm going to go to the local meeting. They're the ones that are saying, where are we going, what night are we going? And that's what I've seen to be the difference between success and not so successful, is the guys that are willing to do the work and listen to the directions from someone that precedes them, that has experience with it working in their life. So my real simple suggestion around here is, if you're struggling, is find someone that has what you want and copy what they do, and you'll probably get similar results. That's what I kind of did, and that's in hindsight. I look back at that and see that happened. So I did these steps with a sponsor, but mostly with the help of groups, coming to these kind of groups, hearing people that spoke from the table, and most of my experience is people that spoke from the audience or from the chairs, that shared their experience. And I can remember going to, this meeting wasn't here at the time, but I can remember going to like Braintree and hearing the men speaking and telling the truth. And what a gift of freedom, being able to hear guys, grown men, bless you, grown men sharing their experience in honesty and not having to pretend or being a chameleon and trying to adapt themselves to that environment. Just telling the truth and talking about their feelings. And that would be in Braintree, and I'm like, wow, that Braintree, there's something about Braintree. And then I'd go to Framingham meeting to a men's group, and I'd say, wow, these guys are saying the same thing, and there's nobody here that was at that Braintree meeting. And then I'd go to Marshfield at the time, and I'd hear the same message. And I'd go to Linfield, and I'd go to these different meetings, and I'd hear people with the same message, but they didn't really know each other, or maybe they knew each other and didn't really come to the same meetings. And that was impressive to see the same solution applied to all problems, as opposed to my first year in Open AA. There was a lot of different solutions to the same problem. And that was attracting to me that these guys are being consistent, that there's consistency in these people that were successful. Working with others, what we're talking about tonight, step 12. I've worked with a lot of guys over the years, and I don't make it to as many meetings as I used to, but I worked with a lot of guys over the years, and I've had sponsors that were in the middle of their fourth step, and two of them in the middle of their fourth step that died. Right in the middle of that, I've worked, my brother died from this disease, the drug OD, and my sister died from this disease. And they both have been to these meetings. They came to the meetings. So, I have sometimes people will ask me, usually they're not an AA member, but they have a family member, and they'll say, Andy, because I keep it pretty open around work and stuff. I regularly talk about meetings and stuff. I have a meeting to go to with my customers. I'll regularly talk about it. I heard this at an AA meeting this week, and I just kind of, I understand anonymity, I understand that, but I like to, if I think that there's a need that someone might be able to, if they're in trouble, or they have a family member that's in trouble with alcohol or drugs, at least have a contact where they can get in touch with someone that can point them in the right direction. The people that I've worked with over the years, and then I've had people ask me, can you help my son? Can you help my husband? Can you help this person? Can you help my uncle? And they're like, can you call them? And I'm like, that's not the way that I've seen it work. That's not my experience. My experience is, here's my number. They can call me, and if they want it. And that's a prerequisite for this stuff to working, is you have to want it. It's not about who needs it, or my brother and sister would be alive, and my sponsees would be alive. That's not how this program works. This program works exactly how it says. It's 100% guaranteed. For me, my experience is that it works 100%. I work with other people. Sometimes they die, I stay sober. I made a commitment to work with others. And as long as I'm willing to help other people, I found it that God will help me, and not just in drinking. And like it's talking about, practice these principles in all of our affairs. I'm talking about, I've incorporated this stuff a long time ago into my work, and I've developed my company into the largest in our industry in Massachusetts. Started it myself, and just not by working hard or being smart, by incorporating these principles into my company and treating my customers the way that I want to be treated. I've incorporated it into my personal life, and I've gotten divorced twice. And I see my kids, and I have the best relationship with my children on a very regular basis. I'm at all their school meetings, all their cheerleading, their soccer, baseball, whatever. And I spend a lot of very good quality time with my family. I get along with both of my ex-wives very, very well. We have great relationships, and it's a result of practicing these principles and incorporating them into my personal life. And, no matter what part of my life this applies, and I had, that I think is where, that was the big pivoting point, is what I found in this program here, that I somehow had it separate, that alcohol and drinking alcohol and willpower was in one column, and my conduct in other areas of my life, like cheating my customers or cheating on my girlfriend or my wife or something, that was somehow unrelated. I didn't know that those were the same thing. I didn't understand these spiritual principles that we're talking about, that when I'm dishonest in my life, that I'm going to be uncomfortable and I'm going to want to artificially change the way that I feel. Today I understand that. It's a very simple concept. And then I chose drugs and alcohol, and I can do it with credit cards, sex, all different kinds of stuff. I could go on for the rest of the meeting and tell you all the things that I used to do that, with many years of sobriety. So I find myself all the time, and I say, Andy, what am I doing stopping at this motorcycle? I have several motorcycles, and I stop when I see a for sale sign and start looking at it. What's that all about, What's that all about? It's about changing the way that I feel. What area am I with? Maybe I need to go work with another man. That's what I need to do a lot of times in those situations. And, there's so many people out there. It's not, for me, it's not about raising my hand and having someone come up and sponsoring. That's part of this. But when we talk about practicing these principles in all of our affairs, we're one person, and it's all interconnected. So if I don't have a person to sponsor, I have several people at a nursing home that I can go visit, which I'll be at this afternoon. And I can go out and take a guy out to lunch today that has no one else in his life. And it works just as well as sitting down and showing someone how to do a fourth step. I can help someone on the side of the road and have 10 people criticize that and say he's probably going to spend it on alcohol. Maybe he will. It's not up to me to make a decision what he does with that money. It's not up to me, if I drive someone to a meeting, to decide whether they stay sober or not. It's whether or not I'm willing to help others and practice these principles in my life. And that's when I get results. So it's just really not something that I figured out on my own. It's something that I needed to come to these meetings and hear the people that preceded me share their honest experience on how these work, incorporate them into my life, get the results, and learn as a result of doing it how this works. So if you're new or you're coming to these meetings, if you're struggling with them, my message is get someone that has what you want and copy what they do, and you'll probably get the same results. If you've been doing this for a long time and your life is great and things are going good and you understand what I'm talking about, these spiritual principles, understand that there's a whole nother dimension after that, and there's probably many more after that. But the deeper that I go into meditation, the deeper that I go into prayer and commit my commitment to my sobriety, the more time that I put into that prayer and meditation every day and helping others, that there's more. I just thought that it was like I'll be content and and not drink or drug. There's so much more than that. There's so much more out there available through these principles. And, it's something that you can't really sit here and explain to you. It's something that, it's like eating an orange. It's something that you need to experience it to know what I'm talking about. But the good news that I carry today is you don't need to be extra smart, extra spiritual, or extra nice for this stuff to work, because I wasn't any of those. You can just do this work, follow the directions, and get these results. I was at a yoga class last night. I'm sorry, the night before. I missed last night. I was telling Denise I was like a minute and a half late. I got stuck in traffic, and I wanted to be at the meeting, the yoga class, and the light was red, and there was 3 cycles, and I had 2 minutes to get in there because I didn't time it right. And I was ready to drive over the sidewalk to go around these people. Those were my first thoughts. Those were my first thoughts. And trust me, I don't have time. I don't want to take up your time and talk about what I used to do, but that wouldn't even be a second thought, driving over the sidewalk and beeping at people to get to where I want. That was a regular daily thing for me. So I was thinking about this in Newton, driving over the sidewalk, Newton Center, I think it is, or Newton Square or something it's called. I'm new at that particular place. But I missed the meeting. The class. I didn't get to go to that class. But I went the night before, and one of the teachers, and I find a lot of similarities when I get into meditation. I'm a certified meditation teacher and yoga instructor. And I find a lot of similarities where it talks in this book about going outside of this program to expand our views on prayer and meditation. And this teacher was talking about principles that we talk about in here, but basically I don't know the exact wording because I was doing the hot power yoga at the same time, but it was basically, and I'll end with this, it was watch your thoughts because your thoughts become your actions, and watch your actions because your actions become your life, and watch your life because then your life becomes your destiny. So what we put in our mind and we choose to think about, whether we choose to think about it or not, isn't probably our choice when it pops into our head. Whether we choose to continue on thinking about it or change our thoughts to how can we help someone else is where we have a decision to make. And that's been my experience, and it works very well. Thank you so much for listening.